this was a bit of an adventure, but it's been a great decision. Challenging as well as exciting. Living in a new culture and driving our business in a market that wasn't in the marketing map in the 90s to becoming one of the largest consumer markets globally today, with 95 million people, 138 billion in retail sales, super fast digital uptake, 64 million Facebook users. So this has been that's been the very rewarding experience. So being an insider inside this, in the middle of this velocity of change and the volatility of this last few years has been really incredibly inspiring experience. In the early 90s, Vietnam went from nothing to a surge of global brands. And there was a lot of enthusiasm. There was a lot of pipelining that was happening, where a lot of distribution-led growth. So a lot of companies grew exponentially around that time. Then around 2010, 2011, things changed. There was economy tanked, the growth rates came down. There was a bad debt crisis in the banking, local banking, stumbled. And then there has been a recovery that's been happening from 15, 16 onwards. So I think the consumers, Vietnamese consumers, have evolved beyond the initial excitement phase. I see that. They have become more mature, they're more aware, they are more digitally connected, they're more time pressured, so they value convenience a lot more. Therefore, things like e-commerce or things that can help them save time are becoming much more relevant. But also they are rebalancing their priorities in life in terms of indulgence versus saving, consumption of consumer products or FMCG consumer products versus education, spending on education or holidays or health and nutrition. So I think that is a big shift that is happening. Most Southeast Asian markets or growth markets have a similar DNA because they are developing and emerging markets. They have large populations, they have large rural, a lot of white space. So there are a lot of similarities. So it's just that there are different points of the continuum from Myanmar to Indonesia to Vietnam. So there are actually a lot of similarities, but there are differences. There are a couple of things that makes Vietnam an outlier. Number one is the very radical reforms model, which has made millions of people escape poverty in a very quick, very short time. So that has been the exceptional aspect of this market, country and economy. This is thanks to the Doi Moi program, the commercialization of agriculture, which was unique to Vietnam. I don't think this model, this is there in anywhere else in Southeast Asia. So Vietnam today is a net exporter of a whole bunch of commodities, from pepper to rice to cashew, where it's global #1 exporter, which overtook India. Coffee, where it's global #2 after Brazil in exports. So those are exceptional aspects. So I think that's those sort of land reforms, agriculture focus, that has been exceptional. The gap between urban-rural or income distribution, the way it is there in many other parts, you don't see the kind of, you see poverty, but you don't see abject poverty that you see in some parts of Southeast Asia. So that's one. The second is very atypical consumption behavior. So Vietnam, whilst it's a D&E market, it's a developing and emerging market, it sometimes doesn't show that it doesn't show in its behavior. So consumers are here, have a strong premiumization DNA. They are willing to buy bigger packs. They are not, so in shampoo, penetration is incredibly high. It's actually near 90 or 100% urban. Rural, equally high. Consumers have they are literate consumers. Third point is the combination of it's a combination of 3 or 4 things, which what makes Vietnam different, and which makes it, which I think is going to is pushing it towards a tipping point, which is the youth demographics, very youth, young people, a lot of young people. It's fast internet uptake, and the fact that it's got very high literacy rates. So these 3-4 things, and urbanization, I think they are pushing this market towards a very interesting point. That's what I think is very different from Southeast Asian, other Southeast Asian markets. Beyond FMCG, the level of consumer engagement is often lacking in sort of innovation. That is one significant gap that is happening. So this market really, initially, a lot of the branding and communication and consumer experience work was happening on consumer brands. So you have people there who have the know-how, and people who created that, who learned it on consumer brands. Now, so that can get repurposed. So they can take that learning and start to apply that into other areas, because there are a whole lot of new areas that are opened up in marketing terms. Say consumer finance, which is a big space now, education, retail, but that's not happening as quickly as possible. So that's a gap that is there. Second is the private companies, and especially state-owned companies, whilst they're very ambitious in Vietnam, they have strong business models, and they're good businesses. But after they hit a certain level in terms of growth, where beyond that, when they need to consumerize, they don't have the know-how, they don't have the talent inside the company to take it to the next level. So that, I think, is a challenge. So a lot of companies have got great business models. So when they go from 0 to 80, but let's say 80 million revenue, but beyond that, the kind of capability that is needed to really go consumer facing and at scale, that is missing. Third is consumer insights, which is weak and patchy, barring a few exceptions. But interesting thing is that whenever insight has been used or leveraged well, the outcome has been exceptional. Step change has happened. And we have seen this happening on some of our clients at Thompson, when we worked on a multinational healthcare company where they had a big brand, but the moment we applied a very unique insight to it, consumer insight to it, it went through the roof and became incredibly big and scaled up. So that opportunity is huge. I think the advice that I have is not just applicable to Vietnam, but again, overall to sort of similar markets in Southeast Asia, which are coming out of their past, agrarian past, and moving into sort of industrialization brands and a digital economy. I think the first advice that I have is that, and I actually read it somewhere, that it's a bumpy road to stardom. So these are volatile markets. So you see the companies that are winners today, they took a very long-term view of the market. They invested into this market. They built scale. They invested into scale. They invested into market share capabilities, and today they are the winners. So it's clearly there's a story there. So this is not a short-term market, as much as no other market in this region. Similar type of market is a market where you can go in and sort of do things very fast. And these are also very volatile markets. So you've got to be there, learn the market, and keep doing things till you hit the tipping point. The opportunities are there. I think the market is interesting, and the future dynamics are even better. And we're doing some great stuff right now for our clients, and I see myself continuing to do that.